The city screamed his name, but I was the one who made him silent. At 32, Julian Voss ruled New York like a king. His empire built on steel, ambition, and fear. And I, Ezra Kane, a nobody from Brooklyn, shattered his world with a single glance. I wasn't supposed to be there that night, standing outside Voss Enterprises' glass tower, clutching a crumpled letter from my brother. The air was thick with autumn's chill, and the city's pulse thrummed through the streets, horns blaring, lights flashing, lives colliding. My brother, Caleb, had worked for Julian, the untouchable CEO whose name was whispered like a curse. Caleb was gone now, lost to a truth he'd uncovered, and I was left to pick up the pieces. The letter in my hand was his last confession. Scrawled in frantic ink, Julian knows. He's dangerous. Don't trust him. Ezra. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing: I needed answers. And I'd get them from the man who controlled everything. I slipped past security, my worn sneakers silent on the marble floors of Voss Enterprises' lobby. The place was a cathedral of wealth, gleaming chandeliers, towering columns, and a coldness that sank into your bones. I wasn't here to beg. I was here to confront. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt like an eternity. My reflection stared back at me in the mirrored walls. 25. Messy brown hair. Eyes too soft for the fight I was picking. I wasn't built for this world of power and secrets. But grief makes you reckless. When the doors opened, there he was. Julian Voss stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, the city sprawling beneath him like a conquered kingdom. His black suit hugged his broad shoulders, and his sharp jawline could have cut glass. He turned, and those green eyes locked onto me, unyielding, like a predator sizing up prey. Who the hell are you? His voice was low, dangerous, like the rumble of a storm. Ezra Kane, I said, stepping forward, my voice steadier than I felt. Caleb's brother. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes: recognition. Maybe guilt. You shouldn't be here, he said, crossing the room in 3 long strides. He towered over me, his presence suffocating. Caleb's dead because of you, I snapped, holding up the letter. He said you knew something. What was it? Julian's gaze dropped to the paper, then back to me. For a moment, I thought he'd throw me out or worse. Instead, he stepped closer, so close I could smell the cedar wood of his cologne. You're playing a dangerous game, Ezra, he murmured. You don't know what you're stepping into. Then tell me, I challenged, my heart pounding. Or I'll find out myself. He stared at me, his eyes searching mine, and for the first time, I saw a crack in the armor of the man who controlled the city. It was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold smirk. You're stubborn, he said. I like that. That night, I didn't get answers, but I got something else: a feeling, sharp and electric. That Julian Voss wasn't just a monster. There was something human buried beneath the ruthlessness, something that stirred when he looked at me. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of everything. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number: meet me at the pier. 8 p.m. Come alone. No name, but I knew it was him. I should have ignored it. I should have run. Instead, I spent the day pacing my tiny apartment, replaying every word from the night before. Julian's voice, his gaze, the way he'd said my name clung to me like smoke. Caleb had warned me about him, but Caleb hadn't told me everything. My brother had been a coder, brilliant and reckless, working on something big for Voss Enterprises. A project called Echelon. He'd mentioned once. His voice hushed with excitement. I didn't know what it was, but it had cost him his life. The pier was deserted when I arrived, the Hudson River lapping against the docks under a bruised sky. Julian was already there, leaning against a rusted railing, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. He didn't turn when I approached, but I felt his awareness, like a current pulling me in. "You came," he said, his voice softer than before. "You didn't give me much choice," I replied, stopping a few feet away. "What's Echelon?" He turned then, his eyes narrowing. "You're digging into things that'll get you killed." Like they got Caleb killed. I shot back. He flinched barely, but I caught it. "Your brother made his own choices," he said, stepping closer. He got too close to something he didn't understand. "Then help me understand," I said, my voice breaking. He was my family. Julian's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd walk away. Instead, he reached out, his hand hovering near my shoulder before dropping. "Echelon is power," he said quietly. "Control. It's a system that tracks everything: money, people, secrets." Caleb found a flaw in it. He wanted to expose it. "And you let him die for it." My voice was raw, accusing. "I didn't," he stopped, his eyes flashing with something I couldn't read. "I tried to protect him." I didn't believe him. Not then. But the way he looked at me, like he was carrying a weight he couldn't share, made me falter. "Stay away from this, Ezra," he said, his voice almost pleading. "For your own sake." But I couldn't. Not when Caleb's ghost lingered in every corner of my life. Not when Julian's presence pulled at something deep inside me. Something I wasn't ready to name. That night, I couldn't sleep. Julian's words echoed in my head, tangled with memories of Caleb, his laugh, his late-night rants about changing the world. I dug through his old laptop, the one he'd left at my place. Password protected, of course, but I knew him better than anyone. After hours of guessing, I cracked it: Ezra Star. Our childhood nickname for me. Inside, I found files, hundreds of them, encrypted, labeled with cryptic names. One stood out: Voss_Echelon_leak. My heart raced as I opened it. Lines of code, emails, schematics. Proof that Echelon wasn't just a system, it was a weapon. It could manipulate markets, track dissenters, silence anyone who got in the way. And Julian was at the center of it. But there was something else in the Falesa message from Caleb. Timestamped the day he died. "Ezra, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I trusted the wrong person. Julian's not what he seems. He's hiding something bigger. Find it." I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was Julian a villain? Or was he caught in the same web as Caleb? All I knew was that I couldn't stop now. Not when I was this close. The next day, I went back to Voss Enterprises. This time, Julian was waiting for me. You don't listen, do you? He said, his voice laced with frustration and something softer. Not when it comes to my brother, I replied, holding his gaze. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. You're going to get yourself hurt, Ezra. Then help me, I said, stepping closer. Tell me the truth. For a moment, he looked like he might. But then his phone buzzed, and his expression hardened. We're not doing this here, he said. Come with me. Against every instinct, I followed him. Julian led me to a black SUV waiting outside, its tinted windows hiding whatever lay inside. The city blurred past as we drove, the silence between us heavy, charged. I wanted to demand answers, but the way his fingers gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled, told me he was wrestling with something too. We stopped at a nondescript warehouse in Red Hook, far from the polished towers of Manhattan. The air smelled of salt and rust, and the distant hum of the city felt like a memory. Julian unlocked a side door, motioning for me to follow. Inside, the space was dimly lit, filled with crates and computer servers humming like a heartbeat. This is where it started, he said, his voice low. Echelon. I stared at the blinking lights, my stomach twisting. What is this place? A testing ground, he said, his eyes fixed on the servers. Caleb worked here. He was brilliant, too brilliant. He saw things I didn't want him to see. Like what? I pressed, my voice sharp. Julian turned to me, his expression unreadable. Echelon wasn't my idea. It came from the board people with more power than me. They wanted control, not just of the city, but of everything. I was just the face. I didn't know if I believed him. His words sounded rehearsed, like a man used to spinning truths. But there was a rawness in his eyes, a flicker of something real. If you're not in charge, why did Caleb die? I asked. He flinched again, and this time, he didn't hide it. I told you. I tried to protect him. He wouldn't listen. He wanted to go public. Ezra. That's a death sentence. My chest tightened. So you let him die? No. He snapped, stepping closer. I begged him to stop. I offered to get him out of the city, to keep him safe. But he was like you, stubborn. The air between us crackled, his breath warm against my face. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for everything. But standing this close, I felt something else, a pull, dangerous and undeniable. His eyes softened, and for a moment, I thought he might touch me. Instead, he turned away, running a hand over his face. You need to leave this alone, he said. For your own good. I can't, I said, my voice trembling. Not until I know the truth. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. You're going to ruin me, he murmured, almost to himself. I didn't know what he meant, but the words sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed again, and he cursed under his breath. We're out of time, he said, grabbing my arm. Come on. He pulled me back to the SUV, driving us through the city at breakneck speed. My mind raced. torn between Caleb's warning and the man sitting beside me. Julian was dangerous, but he wasn't untouchable. Not anymore. Back at my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The files on Caleb's laptop burned in my mind, each one a piece of a puzzle I didn't fully understand. I spent hours digging deeper, decrypting more documents. What I found made my blood run cold. Echelon wasn't just a surveillance system. It was a machine of control, capable of manipulating elections, crashing economies, and erasing anyone who stood in its way. And Julian's name was on every major decision, every contract. If he wasn't the mastermind, he was complicit. But there was something else, a hidden folder labeled JV_personal. Inside, I found emails between Julian and Caleb, dated months before my brother's death. They weren't just professional. They were personal, intimate even. Julian had written things I never expected. You make me question everything. Caleb, I don't know how to do this. My heart pounded. Had Caleb and Julian been something more? The thought hit me like a punch, stirring a confusing mix of jealousy and betrayal. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was there. The next day, I confronted Julian at his office. He was behind his desk, the city glittering behind him like a throne. What was Caleb to you? I demanded, my voice shaking. His eyes widened, just for a second, before his mask slipped back into place. He was a friend, he said carefully. A brilliant mind. Don't lie to me, I said, slamming the printed emails onto his desk. I read them. You cared about him. Julian's jaw clenched, and he stood, towering over me. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice cracked. Then tell me. I shouted. Stop hiding behind your secrets. He stepped around the desk, closing the distance between us. You want the truth, he said, his voice low and raw. Caleb was the only person who ever saw me. Not the CEO, not the monster. Me. And I failed him. His words hung in the air, heavy with guilt. I wanted to scream, to demand more, but the look in his eyes stopped me. It was the same look I'd seen in the mirror after Caleb died, grief. Raw and unrelenting. I'm not him, I said quietly. But I need to know what happened. Julian's gaze softened, and he reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. The touch was electric, and I froze, caught between anger and something I couldn't name. You're nothing like him, he said softly. And that's why I'm terrified. Before I could respond, the door burst open. A man in a suit, flanked by two others, stormed in. Voss, he barked. We need to talk. Now. Julian's hand dropped, his expression hardening instantly. Get out. Ezra, he said, his voice cold again. This isn't your fight. But it was. I knew it then, standing in the shadow of his empire. This was my fight now, and I wasn't backing down. The man who stormed in was Victor Crane, a name I'd seen in Caleb's files. He was older, maybe 50, with a face carved from stone and eyes that could freeze blood. Julian's posture shifted, his shoulders squaring like a soldier facing battle. Victor, he said, his voice clipped. This isn't a good time. Crane's gaze flicked to me, dismissive but calculating. Who's the kid? He asked, his tone dripping with disdain. None of your concern. Julian snapped, stepping in front of me. The move was subtle, protective, and it sent a jolt through me. Crane smirked, his eyes narrowing. You're slipping. Voss. First Caleb. Now this one. Keep your distractions in check, or Echelon goes live without you. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Julian didn't flinch, but I saw the tension in his jaw, the way his fists clenched at his sides. Get out, he said, his voice low and deadly. Crane chuckled, but he left, his goons trailing behind. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Julian turned to me, his eyes stormy. You need to stop this. Ezra. Now. Stop what? I shot back, looking for the truth. You're the one hiding it. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. You don't get it, he said, his voice raw. Crane will kill you without blinking. He doesn't care about you or Caleb or anyone. And you do. I challenged, my heart racing. His hands were still on me, and the heat of his touch was dizzying. I'm trying, he said, his voice breaking. God help me. I'm trying. For a moment, we just stood there, the world narrowing to the space between us. His eyes searched mine, and I saw it again, that crack in his armor. Wider now, exposing something vulnerable. I wanted to hate him, but all I felt was a pull, like gravity, drawing me closer. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He cursed, pulling away to answer it. I caught fragments of the conversation, urgent, clipped words about containment and breaches. When he hung up, he looked at me with something like regret. I have to go, he said. Stay here. Don't leave. Like hell, I said, crossing my arms. I'm not your prisoner. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Ezra, please. Just stay safe. He was gone before I could argue, leaving me alone in his office with nothing but questions and the ghost of his touch. I didn't stay. I couldn't. The files on Caleb's laptop were burning a hole in my mind, and I needed answers. Back at my apartment, I dove deeper into the JV_personal folder. There were more emails, more fragments of a relationship I hadn't known existed. Caleb had written to Julian late at night, his words raw and unguarded. You can't keep pretending you're okay with this, Jules. It's eating you alive. Jules. The nickname hit me like a punch. It was too intimate, too human for the man I'd met. But it was there. In black and white, Caleb had known a side of Julian I couldn't imagine. Then I found a video file, buried deep in the folder. My hands shook as I opened it. Caleb's face filled the screen, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice unsteady. Ezra, if you find this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry. I got in too deep. Echelon's not just a program, it's a cage. Julian's trapped in it. Same as me. He's not the enemy, but he's not free either. If you're watching this, find the key. It's in his office. hidden where no one looks. And Ezra, don't hate him. He's fighting too. The video cut off, and I sat there, frozen, tears burning my eyes. Caleb hadn't just been working for Julian. He'd cared about him. And Julian had cared back. But what was the key? And why was Julian still hiding it? I didn't have time to process it. My phone buzzed a new message from Julian. Crane knows you're digging. Get out of your apartment. Now. Panic surged through me. I grabbed Caleb's laptop and bolted, my heart pounding as I slipped into the stairwell. The city was alive outside, but it felt like a trap closing around me. I didn't know where to go, but I knew I couldn't trust anyone, not even Julian. I ended up at a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen, the kind of place where no one asks questions. I nursed a beer, my mind racing. Caleb's words echoed in my head. Find the key. I had to get back to Julian's office. But Crane's threat loomed large. If he knew I was digging, how long until he found me? Hours later, Julian found me. He walked into the bar like he owned it, his presence cutting through the haze of smoke and chatter. He slid into the booth across from me, his eyes scanning my face. You don't listen, he said, but there was no anger in his voice, just exhaustion. You keep saying that, I replied, leaning forward. But you're not telling me enough to make me stop. He sighed, his fingers drumming on the table. Ezra, I'm trying to keep you alive. Then tell me about the key, I said, my voice low. His eyes widened, just for a moment, before he masked it. What key? Don't, I said, my voice sharp. Caleb left me a message. He said it's in your office. What is it? Julian's face paled, and for the first time, he looked genuinely afraid. You're in deeper than I thought, he said. If Crane finds out, let him. I interrupted. I'm not running anymore. Julian stared at me, his expression torn between frustration and something softer, something that made my chest ache. You're going to be the death of me, he said, but there was a hint of a smile in his voice. And in that moment, I realized I didn't just want answers. I wanted him. The bar's dim lights cast shadows across Julian's face, sharpening the lines of his jaw, softening the green of his eyes. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for Caleb's death. But the pull between us was undeniable, a current I couldn't fight. His hand rested on the table, inches from mine, and I wondered what it would feel like to close that distance. We can't stay here, Julian said, his voice low. Urgent. Crane's men are looking for you. Then let's go, I said, standing. But I'm not hiding. I'm going to your office. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't argue. We slipped out the back, the city's pulse pounding around us in the distance, the hum of late-night traffic. The SUV was waiting, and we drove in silence, the tension between us thick enough to choke on. At Voss Enterprises, the building was eerily quiet, the usual bustle replaced by an oppressive stillness. Julian led me to his office, locking the door behind us. You're sure about this? He asked, his voice tight. Caleb said the key's here, I said, scanning the room. Where would you hide something no one's supposed to find? Julian hesitated, then crossed to a bookshelf lined with leather-bound volumes. He pulled one out, revealing a hidden panel. Inside was a small metal box, locked with a biometric scanner. He pressed his thumb to it, and the box clicked open, revealing a USB drive. "This is it," he said, holding it up. "The key to Echelon. It's a kill switch code that can shut the whole system down." I stared at the drive, my heart racing. "Why didn't you use it?" "Because it's not that simple," he said, his voice heavy. "Echelon's tied to everything: banks, governments, corporations. Shutting it down means chaos. And Crane would kill me before I got the chance." "Then why keep it?" I asked, stepping closer. His eyes met mine, raw and unguarded. "Because Caleb believed in it. He thought it could fix things. I couldn't destroy his hope." The mention of my brother stung, but it also grounded me. "Give it to me," I said, holding out my hand. Julian's jaw tightened. "Ezra, you don't know what you're asking." "I'm asking for a chance to finish what Caleb started," I said, my voice steady. "You owe him that." He stared at me for a long moment, then placed the drive in my hand. His fingers lingered against mine, warm and steady, and my breath caught. "Be careful," he said softly. "I can't lose you too." The words hit me harder than I expected, stirring something deep and dangerous. I pulled my hand away, clutching the drive. "I need to see what's on it," I said, moving to his computer. He didn't stop me, but I felt his eyes on me as I plugged in the drive. The screen lit up with full schematics, code, and a single video labeled Caleb_final. My stomach twisted as I clicked it. Caleb's face appeared again, older and wearier than in my memories. "If you're watching this, you have the key," he said, his voice steady but strained. "Julian's not the enemy, Ezra. He's trapped, like I was. The board: Crane, Ellison, the others: the ones pulling the strings. Use the key, but don't trust anyone. Not even him." The video ended, and I sat back, my mind reeling. Julian was watching me, his expression unreadable. "What did he say?" he asked. I hesitated, Caleb's warning ringing in my ears. "He said you're trapped," I said carefully. "That the board's in control." Julian nodded, his face grim. "He's right. I've been trying to outmaneuver them for years, but they're always one step ahead." "Then why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice rising. "Why let me think you were the villain?" "Because I am," he said, his voice breaking. "I let Caleb get too close. I let him die. I won't let that happen to you." His words hung between us, heavy with guilt and something else, something that made my chest ache. I wanted to believe him, but Caleb's warning echoed in my mind. "Don't trust anyone." Before I could respond, the lights flickered, and an alarm blared through the building. Julian's head snapped up. "They're here," he said, grabbing my arm. "We need to move." "Who?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Crane's men," he said, pulling me toward a hidden door behind his desk. "They know you have the key." The door led to a narrow stairwell, and we descended into darkness, the sound of boots echoing above us. My mind raced. How had they known? Had Julian betrayed me? But his hand on my arm was steady, guiding me through the maze of corridors beneath the building. We emerged into an alley, the city's noise crashing over us like a wave. Julian's SUV was waiting, but before we could reach it, a black van screeched to a stop, blocking our path. Men in dark suits spilled out, their guns glinting in the streetlights. "Get behind me," Julian said, his voice calm but commanding. I didn't argue. My heart pounded as he faced them, his posture unyielding. "You're making a mistake," he called out. "Walk away." One of the men laughed, stepping forward. "Hand over the drive, Voss, or the kid dies." Julian's eyes flicked to me, and I saw a decision, quick and final. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a gun I hadn't known he carried. "Not today," he said, and the world exploded into chaos. Gunshots rang out, sharp and deafening, as Julian pulled me behind a dumpster. The air smelled of metal and fear, and my heart slammed against my ribs. He fired back, his movements precise, like he'd done this before. I clutched the USB drive in my pocket, its weight a reminder of everything at stake. "Stay down," Julian hissed, his eyes scanning the alley. The men from the van were advancing, their shouts cutting through the chaos. I wasn't a fighter, but I wasn't helpless either. I grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, my hands shaking but ready. Julian glanced at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "You're full of surprises," he said, almost smiling. "Shut up and focus." I snapped, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, firing another shot that sent one of the men scrambling for cover. But there were too many, and they were closing in. Julian grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward a side street. "Run," he said, his voice urgent. We sprinted through the labyrinth of alleys, the city a blur of neon and shadow. My lungs burned, but Julian's grip kept me moving. We ducked into a boarded-up storefront, the air thick with dust and mildew. He pressed me against the wall, his body shielding mine as footsteps thundered past outside. His breath was warm against my neck, his heart pounding as hard as mine. "You okay?" he whispered. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. His closeness was overwhelming, his scent cedarwood and adrenaline filling my senses. For a moment, the world shrank to just us, the danger outside a distant hum. "We can't stay here," he said, pulling back but not letting go. His eyes searched mine, and I saw it again, that raw, unguarded look that made my chest ache. "Where do we go?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "There's a safe house," he said, "but we need to lose them first." He led me through the back of the building, emerging into another alley. The city was a maze, but Julian navigated it like he'd mapped every corner. We reached a subway station, blending into the late-night crowd. My mind raced Crane, the key, Caleb's warning, and Julian, always Julian, pulling me deeper into his world. On the train, we stood close, the sway of the car pressing us together. His hand rested on my arm, steadying me, and I didn't pull away. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice low. "Why protect me?" He didn't answer right away, his eyes fixed on the dark tunnel outside. Because I couldn't save him, he said finally. And because you're different. The words hit me like a tidal wave, stirring something I wasn't ready to face. I looked away, my heart pounding, but his hand tightened on my arm, grounding me. We reached the safe housing in unassuming brownstone in Brooklyn, hidden in plain sight. Inside, it was sparse but secure, with reinforced doors and a bank of monitors showing the street outside. Julian locked the door behind us, his shoulders slumping slightly, like the weight of the night was finally catching up. Tell me everything, I said, sitting on a worn couch. No more half-truths. He paced, his hands running through his hair. Echelon was never about money, he said. It was about control. The board crane, Ellison. The others, they want a world where nothing moves without their say. I was their tool, their face. But Caleb, he saw through it. He found the kill switch, and he paid for it. And you? I asked, my voice sharp. What's your role in this? I'm the one who keeps it running, he said, his voice heavy with guilt. But I've been trying to dismantle it from the inside. It's why I kept the key. I held up the USB drive, my hands trembling. Then let's use it. Shut it down. It's not that simple, he said, stopping to face me. If Echelon goes down, the fallout will be catastrophic. Economies will crash. Systems will fail. People will get hurt. And if we don't, I countered, how many more will die to keep it running? He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. He was torn, caught between duty and something deeper, something tied to me. I stood, closing the distance between us. Caleb believed in you, I said. He thought you could do the right thing. Don't prove him wrong. Julian's breath hitched, and for a moment, I thought he might pull away. Instead, he reached out, his hand cupping my face. You're too much like him, he said softly, and nothing like him at all. The air between us crackled, and before I could think, his lips were on mine. The kiss was desperate, hungry, like he'd been holding back for too long. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his shirt, the world falling away. But then the monitors beeped, a red light flashing. Julian pulled back, his eyes wide. They found us, he said, grabbing his gun. The door rattled, and my heart stopped. We were out of time. The safe house door shuddered under a heavy blow, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Julian pulled me behind a steel cabinet, his gun raised, his body tense but steady. Stay low, he whispered, his voice calm despite the chaos. I clutched the USB drive, my mind racing. The kiss still burned on my lips, a reckless moment that had shifted everything. But there was no time to process it, not with Crane's men breaking through. The door gave way, and 3 figures burst in, their faces masked, their guns drawn. Julian fired first, the sound deafening in the small space. One man went down, but the others returned fire, bullets tearing through the air. I ducked, my heart pounding, the pipe still in my hand. Ezra, get to the back room, Julian shouted, firing again. I didn't want to leave him, but I knew he was right. I scrambled toward a narrow hallway, my pulse thundering. The back room was a dead end, but there was a laptop on a desk, already powered on. I plugged in the USB drive, my hands shaking as the files loaded. The screen filled with code lines of commands that could end Echelon. But Caleb's warning echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone. Could I trust Julian? Even now. The memory of his kiss, his desperation, clashed with the secrets he still kept. Gunfire echoed from the main room, followed by a grunt of pain. My stomach dropped. Julian. I grabbed the pipe and ran back, ignoring his orders. He was pinned behind the couch, blood seeping through his sleeve. One of the masked men was advancing, his gun trained on Julian's head. I didn't think. I swung the pipe, catching the man's arm. He cursed, his gun clattering to the floor, and Julian seized the moment, tackling him to the ground. The second man turned on me, but Julian was faster, firing a shot that sent him sprawling. Ezra. What the hell? Julian panted, his eyes wide with a mix of anger and relief. You're welcome, I said, my voice shaky but defiant. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the back room. We need to get out of here, he said, wincing as he moved. Your arm, I started, but he shook his head. It's fine. We don't have time. Back at the laptop, I showed him the screen. This is it, isn't it? The kill switch. He nodded, his face grim. Once you activate it, there's no going back. Then let's do it, I said, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. He grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. Ezra, listen to me. This will destroy everything I've built. My company, my life fights all tied to Echelon. And Crane won't stop until we're both dead. I searched his eyes, seeing the fear, the guilt, the man beneath the CEO. Then we fight, I said. Together. For a moment, he just stared at me, something breaking in his expression. Then he nodded. Together. I hit the key, and the screen flashed red. A countdown starting, 60 seconds to system shutdown. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as the reality of what we'd done sank in. We need to move, Julian said, pulling me toward a hidden exit. We stumbled into the night, the city's lights blinding after the dim safe house. His arm was bleeding worse now, and I tore off my jacket, wrapping it around the wound. You're going to be okay, I said, my voice fierce. He managed a weak smile. You're too stubborn to let me die? We made it to a quiet street, the sound of sirens growing closer. Julian leaned against a wall, his face pale but determined. There's a backup plan, he said. A contact in D. C. Who can protect us? But we need to get out of the city first. Who is it? I asked, my mind still reeling. Someone Caleb trusted, he said. A journalist named Lena Harper. She's been investigating Echelon for years. The name sparked a memory. Lena had been mentioned in Caleb's files, a contact he'd reached out to before he died. If she was still out there, she could help us expose Crane and the board. But before we could move, headlights flooded the street. Another van screeched to a stop, and Crane himself stepped out, his face twisted with rage. You thought you could end this. He snarled, his gun trained on us. Julian pushed me behind him, his own gun raised despite the blood soaking his sleeve. It's over, Victor, he said. Echelon's done. Crane laughed. A cold, hollow sound. You're a fool, Voss. You think a kill switch changes anything? I own this city. Then why are you here? I said, stepping out from behind Julian. My voice shook, but I held my ground. If you're so powerful, why are you afraid of us? Crane's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought he'd shoot. But then Julian stepped forward, his voice steady. He's right, Victor. You're scared. Because without Echelon, you're nothing. The standoff stretched, each second a lifetime. Then Crane's radio crackled, and a voice came through, systems down. It's gone. Crane's face contorted, and he raised his gun. But before he could fire, Julian lunged, tackling him to the ground. They struggled, and I grabbed the pipe, swinging it at Crane's head. He went limp, and Julian staggered to his feet, breathing hard. We need to go, he said, grabbing my hand. As we ran, the city seemed to shift around us, the weight of Echelon's collapse already rippling through the streets. And through it all, Julian's hand in mine felt like the only thing keeping me grounded. We didn't stop running until we reached a parking garage, where Julian's backup car, a sleek, unmarked sedan, was hidden. He slid into the driver's seat, wincing as he gripped the wheel with his injured arm. I took the keys from him, ignoring his protest. You're bleeding out, I said. I'm driving. He didn't argue, which told me how bad it was. As I sped out of the city, the skyline fading in the rearview mirror, I felt the weight of what we'd done. Echelon was gone, but Crane's men were still out there, and we were far from safe. Where are we going? I asked, glancing at Julian. His face was pale, his eyes heavy, but he was still with me. Upstate, he said, his voice weak. Lena's got a place off the grid. She'll help us get the truth out. I nodded, focusing on the road. The USB drive was still in my pocket, a lifeline and a curse. Caleb's voice echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone but Julian's presence beside me. Warm and real, made it hard to doubt him. The drive took hours, the night stretching endlessly as we wound through dark highways. Julian drifted in and out, his head leaning against the window. I kept talking to him, afraid he'd slip away. Stay with me, I said, my voice cracking. You don't get to leave me now. He managed a faint smile. Bossy, he murmured. I like it. I laughed, a shaky sound, and reached for his hand. His fingers curled around mine, weak but steady, and for the first time, I let myself believe we might make it. Lena's cabin was tucked in the Adirondacks, hidden among pines and silence. She was waiting for us, a wiry woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. You look like hell, she said to Julian, ushering us inside. She patched him up, her hand steady as she stitched his wound. You're lucky it wasn't deeper, she said. Now tell me what the hell you two did. We told her everything. Echelon, the key, Crane. She listened, her face grim, as she recorded our story on a secure laptop. "This is bigger than I thought," she said when we finished. "But I've got contacts at the Times. We can blow this wide open." Julian shook his head. "Not yet. Crane's still out there. He'll come for us." Then we move fast. Lena said, "I'll get this to my editor by morning. You two stay here. Lay low." But laying low wasn't in my blood. I spent the night poring over the USB drive's files with Lena, piecing together the board's plans. They'd been using Echelon to manipulate markets, silence whistleblowers, even sway elections. The evidence was damning, but it needed to be airtight. Julian watched me from the couch, his eyes soft but intense. "You don't stop, do you?" he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Not when it's for Caleb," I said, meeting his gaze. "Or for you." He looked away, his expression unreadable, but I saw the way his hands tightened, like he was holding himself back. The next morning, Lena left for D.C., promising to keep us updated. The cabin felt too quiet without her, the weight of our situation pressing in. Julian was stronger, his color returning, but the tension between us was thicker than ever. "We need to talk," I said, sitting across from him at the kitchen table. "About what?" he asked, but his eyes said he knew. "About us," I said, my heart pounding. "About what happened in the safe house." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Ezra, I'm not good for you. I'm the reason Caleb's gone. I'm the reason you're in danger." "Stop it," I said, my voice sharp. "You didn't kill him. You tried to save him. And you're saving me now." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "You don't know what I've done. The things I've let happen." "Then tell me," I said, reaching for his hand. "Let me in." For a moment, he didn't move. Then he turned his hand, lacing his fingers with mine. "I loved him," he said, his voice barely audible. "Not the way you think. But he was my friend. My only real friend. And then you came. And you," he stopped, his eyes searching mine. "You make me want to be better." My chest ached, the weight of his words settling deep. "You already are," I said, leaning closer. "You're fighting for the right thing now." He kissed me then, softer this time, but no less desperate. It was a promise, a confession, a moment that felt like it could hold the world together. But the world had other plans. Lena's call came that afternoon. Crane had vanished, and the board was scrambling to cover their tracks. The story was breaking, but we weren't safe yet. "We need to go public," I said, looking at Julian. "All of it. Your name. Mine. Everything." He nodded, his face resolute. "Then we do it together." As we planned our next move, I felt the weight of Caleb's legacy, of Julian's redemption, of the love growing between us. It was fragile, but it was ours. And it was worth fighting for. The cabin's quiet was shattered by the crunch of tires on gravel. Julian and I froze, our eyes locking. "Stay here," he said, grabbing his gun from the table. "Like hell. I said, following him to the window. A black SUV idled outside, its headlights cutting through the dawn mist. Lena wasn't due back for hours, and no one else knew where we were. Julian's hand tightened on the gun, his body tense but steady. If it's Crane, we end this now, he said, his voice low. I nodded, my heart pounding as I grabbed the pipe from the safe house fight. It felt heavier now, a reminder of how far we'd come and how much we could still lose. The SUV's door opened, and a figure stepped out. Not Crane, but Ellison, another board member from Caleb's files. He was younger than Crane, with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Voss, he called, his voice smooth but edged with menace. Let's talk. Julian stepped onto the porch, his gun raised. No more talking, he said. Echelon's gone. You've got nothing left. Ellison laughed, spreading his hands. You think a kill switch ends this? We've got backups, Voss. And we've got you. My stomach dropped. Backups. Caleb hadn't mentioned anything about that. I glanced at Julian, but his face was unreadable. His focus locked on Ellison. You're bluffing, Julian said, but there was a flicker of doubt in his voice. Am I? Ellison said, stepping closer. Hand over the kid and the drive. And maybe we let you walk. I stepped out beside Julian, my grip tight on the pipe. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. Ellison's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, a second car roared up the drive. Lena's. She jumped out, a camera in hand, live streaming to her network. Smile, Ellison, she called. You're on air? The shift was immediate. Ellison's composure cracked, his hand reaching for a gun. But Julian was faster, firing a warning shot that sent him diving for cover. Lena kept filming, her voice steady as she narrated the scene for the world. Run, Julian shouted, grabbing my arm. We bolted for the woods, Lena's car providing cover as Ellison's men opened fire. The trees swallowed us, branches snapping underfoot as we ran. Julian's hand in mine was the only thing keeping me grounded, his strength a lifeline in the chaos. We hid behind a massive oak, our breaths ragged. Lena's got this, Julian said, his voice low. The world's watching now. They can't touch us. But I wasn't so sure. Ellison's words about backups haunted me. If Echelon was still out there, we hadn't won. Not yet. We stayed in the woods until Lena's signal cameo text confirming the live stream had gone viral. Ellison and his men had fled, but the damage was done. The world knew about Echelon, about the board, about us. Back at the cabin, Lena was packing up, her face grim but triumphant. The story's out, she said. But you two need to disappear. Crane's still out there, and he won't stop. Julian nodded, his hand still in mine. We'll go west, he said. Start over. I looked at him, my heart swelling. Together? I asked, my voice soft. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. Together. Months later, we were in a small town in Oregon, far from the city's chaos. Julian had traded his suits for flannel, his empire for a quiet life. I'd found work at a local bookstore, the USB drive locked away in a safe, a reminder of what we'd survived. The world had changed after Lena's broadcast. The board was under investigation. Echelon's backups exposed and dismantled. Crane was still out there, a shadow we couldn't quite shake. But we were free. For now. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Julian and I sat on the porch of our rented cabin. His arm was around me, his warmth a constant against the cool air. "I never thought I'd have this," he said, his voice quiet. "A life. A home. You." I leaned into him, my heart full. "Caleb would be proud," I said. "Of both of us." He kissed my forehead, his lips soft and sure. "He led me to you," he murmured. "That's enough." We'd fought for truth, for justice, for each other. And in the end, we'd found something Moria loved that had broken through the ruthlessness. The secrets. The city itself. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And that was worth everything.